podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, sisters. Making up for last week, we're here a day early with a big day for my daughter. Presents, open presents, Father Christmas will come approaching, and the madness of the FPL calendar about to take hold. Back in these very warm Christmas jumpers. Unusually, the one with Mark is normally the last one before 25th, but the calendar has fallen a little bit differently this year. I'm joined as always by Sam. All good, mate? All set for Christmas? You must be very close to signing off for the festive period.
Yeah, close. Although life as a freelancer, you're never like truly offline. But yeah, I'll be wrapping it up fairly soon and hopefully a couple of days off. And yeah, I wish I was a bit more prepared. I haven't done any of my present wrapping yet, but I'll try and find some time in the next couple of days. I'm more interested in talking about the enthralling first half that we just witnessed between Fulham and Forest. So that's what my mind is on. The DEFCON count is off the charts right now. But yeah, very excited to see the conclusion of that one in about an hour or so, see which Anderson comes out on top. In the meantime, though, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's agenda, it is a red Christmas for both good and bad reasons. Not quite Game of Thrones style in terms of a bloodbath, but a couple of things to cover with players and FPL managers potentially getting into the red zone with 4 game weeks in the space of 14 days from Boxing Day onwards, of course. We're getting into the calendar for FPL relevant teams today, as we mentioned last week with Mark briefly, and then it's the players in red. So we've got Bruno finally breaking down after years of being absolutely impossible to get injured for him. He's finally done it. And of course, we'll be talking about the transfers flying in for Ekitike in particular. On the radar for a lot of managers, we'll be discussing the ramifications of that on the template later on and going into Christmas. Then on to form versus fixtures, where there are lots of new names on the table, including 1 or 2 that I'm sure a lot of you are looking at buying this week. And of course, 1 week punts makes a return, a slightly better week for me this time round. And best captaincy, obviously a bit of a straight shootout this week between 1 or 2 men. So we'll be talking about that. And finally, moving on to our teams, where I think it's fair to say that we've got a few different transfer routes in mind. So that might be an extended section today. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate because we've all got the same sort of players that we're looking at moving between. And of course, it's Monday, the 22nd of December. Halftime in the enthralling Fulham versus Forest game, which we will, of course, be keeping an eye on. It will have an impact on our fortunes in game week 17. And with that, let's move on to scores on the doors.
Yes. So a little bit to go. I've got 2 men on the pitch at the moment in Andersen and Harry Wilson, who's looking a bit quieter today, I've got to say. But hey, let's see. It's the first half. Any given moment, this turtle like Harry Wilson can spring into action like a fox. Yes, so 74 points. One of those weeks where you have to really do well to get a green arrow. And I've been doing all right. I think it's 5 points but behind safety at the moment, which is fine. So like maybe a grey, maybe a green if the second half goes well for me. Basically, the story was that Haaland wasn't my triple captain this week. That was simply kind of it. And Morgan Rogers, who we'll speak about later on, 20% effective ownership, I think, at my rank of 170k-ish. With that sumptuous brace. So yeah, those things have come together to net me a small red arrow. Is what it is, really. Returners in Cappy was with a 10-pointer, which was very, very welcome. As of course, Raya getting the clean sheet and also getting the bonus, nicking Timbers overnight last night. Semenyo, who came back in a couple of weeks ago with a 10-pointer, which is lovely to see. And yeah, Haaland. That's kind of it. Oh no, Riley got a clean sheet as well. So yeah, 74. I think it's 76 now. I need probably a clean sheet and hopefully a return for Wilson to make it safe. But yeah, I'm expecting a small red arrow. But hey, you know what? After 11 greens in a row and being ensconced in top 100k for Christmas, I think that's kind of all right. Yeah, there we go. But the real story of the week, I mean, I said my goalkeeper nicked a bonus. Someone else's goalkeeper in one moment nicked how many points, Sam?
Yeah, so he up to 13 points. And after this time last week, when I was basically berating my choice of goalkeeper to bring in Kelleher, he's actually gone and proven me wrong very quickly. So thank you. And I did mention it. He's got a very good penalty save ratio. And I think it helped that it was against a Wolves side that were ready to just give up and throw in the towel at any minute's notice. So yeah, I mean, he was definitely helped by quite a weak penalty from Strand Larsen there. One of the first penalties I've ever heard where straight after it, you could hear like active booing of the penalty, which is very interesting.
Never good, is it?
Response and fair response as well, to be fair. But yeah, 13 points from him. Without that, I'd be staring down the barrel of a pretty sizable red arrow, especially with only Anderson to go tonight. He's halfway to DEFCON, but I'm not thinking he's going to get an attacking return, so I don't think it's going to get much better for me. And of course, Andersen is on a clean sheet at the moment at 20% effective ownership, so it's probably not going to end up brilliantly for me tonight. And of course, Wilson could return as well, who I don't have. But I'm on 78 points, so a couple ahead of you, but I don't think yours took into account the appearance points so far, so I think we're about even. Timber lost a bonus point, which obviously you gained in the form of Raya. O'Reilly kept his third clean sheet on the bounce, which was all right. And then in my midfield, my transfer in, Semenyo was my only returner so far. Obviously, we've got the second half for Anderson to come. But yeah, 10 points from him. That was warmly received. And then up top, it was Haaland, who unfortunately damaged my rank just about, only 10-11% ownership effectively again. But still, it's not a car crash week, but considering I came into this week feeling pretty good about my 11, yeah, it's a bit frustrating not to get a better green arrow out of this one, or a green arrow at all out of this one, especially with a goalkeeper saving a clean sheet there. Feels like that's almost an achievement unlock to manage that and not get a green arrow. But yeah, not many of my players did many points, so there you go. Sadly, it looks like a red arrow, but not a big one and not one that I'm in crisis over.
No, definitely not. And then obviously lots of transfers in store for Bruno Fernandes.
Indeed.
Well, figure out that conundrum in just a bit. But first, Christmas congestion. So last week with Mark, we spoke through the madness that FPL managers, but somebody please think of the managers, have to deal with over the Christmas period. Just to reiterate that, you've got, after this weekend or this week's action, you've got 3 days, and then you've got 3 one-day breaks in a row before the next deadline. So lots and lots and lots of alarms need to be set on those phones over Christmas to make sure you're, especially if you've overindulged on the old beer, on the old turkey, on the old cheese like I will be, make sure that you at least awaken from your stupor to either make your transfer, set your captain, or whatever. I'm sure you'll be fine. On top of that, though, there are loads of teams who have a different schedule all about. I have made another Gantt chart, which shows both the Christmas schedule for FPL managers and also the schedule for FPL relevant sides. There's going to be some others, but these are probably the core ones. We're not going to go through this one by one because I think that would be incredibly boring. No one likes a big, long calendar discussion. Well, some people do, blah, 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 but I don't. And the headlines, I guess, from this are as written. We discussed these last week, but it's 4 game weeks in 2 weeks from Boxing Day. 40 games is 3,600, not 36,000 minutes of football exam. 3,600, 4 deadlines, and then only 4, including New Year's Eve, which is in the middle of a game week, days of no Premier League between Boxing Day and the 8th of Jan. So yes, as you said last week, Mark, it is the most wonderful time of the year. And there's lots of stuff to chat about because there are loads of teams here who have got a very strange schedule in loads of ways. I think, I suppose what's really striking, Sam, is we've got a bit of a break for most teams between game week 17 and game week 18, but especially for Arsenal and Palace, because you've got the Carabao Cup quarter-final tomorrow night. It looks a bit dicey for their assets, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly could be. And it's a key reason why a few people are still holding off on making the transfers, despite a lot of players rising and falling quite quickly, because we've already seen it. I mean, people moved early before the Man United game, and yeah, even the most almost bulletproof players can still go down injured. And we've got quite a few players in that Crystal Palace Arsenal game to come. So there is risk attached to moving early. You've got Saka in there, Timber. I mean, Raya, it's unlikely that he gets injured, but it could happen. And then you've got a fair few people on Crystal Palace boys as well. So could happen. It's not impossible. So yeah, if you can wait another night, I'd probably advise doing so. And look, I mean, we've talked about it a little bit offline already. We'd imagine Arsenal and Palace rotate a bit in this game, but it is an opportunity for a trophy for both of them. And a trophy for both Glasner and for Arteta would be pretty important. So I don't know how much they're going to rotate. There'll be a bit, but I'm really interested to see whether Saka gets good minutes in this one, for example. And then I think that will be indicative of which match, if any, he might miss out over the Christmas period. But I think we'll learn a lot tomorrow, just from what happens in the game, the result, but also the minutes some of these players are getting, and which players the managers are confident or comfortable in starting after a pretty quick turnaround for both teams.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think with that high load, there have got to be worries about players like Saka, famous with a bit of a penchant for a limp off the pitch. Players, who are returning from injury. You've got Gabriel, whose return is imminent. I mean, how's his introduction going to play out? You've got 2 days before. Well, now it's just obviously tomorrow before that quarter final. Then it's just 3 days to Brighton. 2 days, 3 days, and 4 days. I think Arsenal are the only team on this graphic. I'm pretty sure they're the only team who've got 4 days gap between game weeks 20 and 21. So in some ways, if there's good spacing on one end, there's slightly more punishing spacing on the other, and so on and so forth. But I suppose what we're really looking for, Sam, is things like when you look at Liverpool and you say, okay, so they've got 6 days, they've had 6 days up until the Wolves game, and then they've got 4 days after that to Leeds, and then 2 days after that to Fulham. But some, 2 very plumb fixtures where you've got preloaded quite a decent break there. And I suppose that sort of thing, and we'll come on to Ekitike in just a minute, because I know lots of people are thinking about him, but stuff like that is really what you want to see as would-be investors, or in many people listening and watching this case, already newly minted owners of assets from those teams.
Yeah, so I think with Liverpool in mind, they're obviously going to be very interesting for a lot of us looking at moving to Ekitike. Szoboszlai will come on the menu next week, and you've also got Wirtz being bought by quite a few managers as well. I think if you're looking at Virgil van Dijk, you're not worried whatsoever, because he'll probably just play 90 throughout all of these matches, barring injury, of course. And in fairness, the first 2 matches of this run, Wolves and Leeds, the spacing's good enough that even with Ekitike, Wirtz, Szoboszlai will get rested anyway, so probably irrelevant. But even with those 2 in mind, you'd imagine they're pretty secure for both of those matches. They're both at home as well, which really helps. There's no travel, so they can just get straight home after the match, wrap themselves up in cotton wool for a couple of days, have a day of training, and then back into the action absolutely fine. It's that quick turnaround where they have to travel down to Fulham in London that I just wonder if there are any nagging doubts for players coming out of that Leeds game. And that will be a high octane, high intensity game. Leeds obviously made it very difficult for them at Ellen Road. They're going to try and do the same away at Anfield. I just wonder if there's a couple of players that come out of that with a little bit of a problem. And with a 2-day turnaround, it's quite difficult to assess them properly, figure out whether or not they're good to start, and then also give them really strong minutes in that Fulham game. So I think also bearing in mind it's Arsenal 3 days after that, which is a huge, huge match for them. I do wonder if the Fulham game is one where we should be maybe a little bit concerned about the minutes, even for someone like Ekitike. And we spoke about it again offline yesterday, I think. With Isak out, Ekitike should be absolutely nailed. Great minutes. And I think that will be the plan for them. Whenever he's fit and available, they'll play him for as long as they can. But then the question is, how long can they play him? Because even if he's the only player up front that can play in that centre forward role, they might still need to rest him, or he might get injured. It's not impossible. It's not a given that he just will be okay for all of this. So yeah, it's not putting me off, but it's just something to think about, I suppose. That one turnaround between 19 and 20, I'm a little concerned by.
Yeah, no, I think that is it kind of varies between a lot of the teams. There are some that have 2 days between 18 and 19. So Arsenal have got that. Villa have got that. For anyone's gone Rodgers, Everton getting some interest. 2 days there. If you're a Wilson owner, Anderson owner, but Anderson probably less worrying. But 2 days between their 18 and 19 fixtures. Whereas on the other hand, you do have Liverpool with those 4 days. You've got City, who also have 4 days, and Brentford as well. So if anyone does have Thiago or has gone with a Brentford defender, they've got 4 days between their home games against Bournemouth and against Bournemouth and Spurs, and then if they get 4 days, then they seem to get for 2 days, and other teams seem to have it the other way around. So it's a very sort of changeable period that we're about to kind of meet. And I think the one big thing to flag really, and we will be here back, I think, on the 4th of January to flag this. But game week 20 and 21, Arsenal 4 days, Villa 3 days, Liverpool have the 3 days. But other than that, basically most of the league has just a 2-day turnaround. And I think that, Sam, is going to be the time when we have that kind of teams flagging, especially those who aren't used to playing so often. And I think that basically most teams are going to hit that red zone. We call it Red Christmas, this show. I think that's true. That's when a lot of players are going to be in the red zone. I suspect the quality of football is going to go down. And I just wonder, really, and I think I had a little look at this, and it's qualitative. It's very difficult to pin down some sort of trend. Like I was sat there, on Excel trying to put something together to say, oh yeah, there's more goals scored, there's less goals scored, etc., and so on and so on. I just feel that there's going to be max randomness in terms of late lineups, in terms of results. It's going to be like that one, I think, is going to be the hardest week to read the tea leaves on, because there can be so many teams who are knackered. and as you said earlier on, that the big fixture is the one where there is a bit of a rest, the Arsenal-Liverpool game. The rest of them do feel like, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem with this period is it's all well and good trying to predict which players are just going to be nailed. And that we almost have like an instinctive list of 90-minute men. They tend to be the centre-backs as well, but you can only fill out so many positions in your 11 with those kind of players. And even them during this period are still viable for rotation and can still get injured. It's perfectly plausible that a player, even as fit and as available constantly as Bruno Fernandes, can still go down injured. And that's before we even reach this fixture crunch. So look, there's only so much preparation you can do, but it is wise to give yourself a bit more depth and be open to the lack of control you're probably going to have between game week 20 and 21. I think 18, you're probably going in fresh for most players, and maybe outside of some Arsenal, some Crystal Palace, but they tend to be okay. 19, you're approaching that sort of amber territory, if we're using the red zone metaphor for a bit longer. And then by the time you get to 20 and 21, that's when all hell can break loose. And most of your players, if you've got your 90-minute men, will probably be okay. But there will be a few that unexpectedly, out of nowhere, just end up getting rested, rotated, injured. All of these things can happen. So I think just try to give yourself as much depth as possible. Be open to the idea of a lack of control or a lack of predictability. And there are ways of safeguarding against that. Give yourself a couple extra free transfers if you can. Obviously, try to leave the transfers as long as you can to try and get the maximum amount of information. Try not to move early if possible during some of these game weeks. So game week 20, for example, a few players you might want to be buying on the Saturday. I'd probably wait for after the matches are done on the Sunday, just in case. So just little things like that. It's all just hygiene, I suppose. And there's only so much you can control. But yeah, I would have a big warning sign next to game week 20 and 21 in particular to know that, yeah, I might need to be reactive to whatever goes down in 19 and 20, i.e. the previous game weeks.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think that what's a bit bizarre, maybe not bizarre actually, maybe it is kind of what we see every year, maybe I'm kind of overthinking it, is that right now I think we've only really got Arsenal and City where people are likely to have three probably representatives in their team, and those are the teams that probably we're going to be zeroing in on the most in terms of thought process. Like the teams that are on here that we've referenced also have also on here are Chelsea, Newcastle, West Ham. All of those kind of just 0 in and 1 individual that you've got. And I suppose that heightens the exposure. It was mentioned last week that the importance of bench and having some decent bench cover. We say every year, so for the last 9 years, for God's sake. But there's nothing kind of particularly odd about this year, except for that final week being so mad and being tacked on at the very end. So we'll take it as it comes, I think. We've got this weekend, I think we're actually coming back in the middle of it, but the peculiarity of it actually is, apart from the Palace players, I think that we're actually FPL-wise, engaged manager-wise, going to be mostly all out by Saturday. I think the Sunday is Sunderland Leeds at 2, Palace Spurs at 4:30. So you kind of got quite a few teams who are playing on the Friday and Saturday, so Boxing Day on the 27th, who then go into kind of their rest a little bit, just that tad earlier, I guess, than the likes of Palace. And that might kind of help start to be a bit of a springboard, but it is so difficult to read the tea leaves in this period, honestly. And I don't know. I think all the stuff that we said before, it's all quite obvious if you are an engaged manager, but ensuring those minutes are kind of accounted for. If you are going for a spicy pick, the Ekitike was last week, and now probably is not as much. Then make sure that you're doing it eyes wide open. You've got that cover hanging around. Do you think there's going to be more or less clean sheets, Sam, or more or less goals as players get tired? I'm just trying to remember kind of, what it's like in FPL that every year you think, oh, I remember that for next year. It just goes, doesn't it? You just completely forget about what happened. I can't remember what happened last week, let alone what happened last year. Are there more goals as players get knackered? I've got a feeling that there are. That kind of clean sheets go out the window, like team structure goes out the way when fatigue kind of kicks in and more silly goals get scored. That might be me, though. And it might be the quality in defence and tactical shape kind of shows. I don't know.
So I have a little bit of a theory on this, and it's not quantitative, it's very subjective and qualitative data and very eye testy. I think the best prepared teams, or the most well-drilled teams, maybe the ones with the most depth as well, do batten down the hatches a little bit during this winter period. They don't exert their energy as much as they might otherwise. I think you see during this period quite often, not every year, but quite often, Arsenal, Man City, Crystal Palace as well might be a good example. Yet to see that this year, of course, but in seasons gone past, where they are a well-drilled team with a very solid defence when they want to be. And it's quite a conscious decision to maybe not exert themselves so much during this period. So their defences might be a little bit tighter, and they might rely on the 1-0s, 2-0s just to get over the line during this period. So that later on in the season, if they're going deep in Europe, for instance, they've got the depth and they've got plenty of energy left to go really hard in those competitions. Again, just subjective. I don't have any data on that. It's just something that I kind of just instinctively feel over the last few years. Whereas the less well-prepared teams, or the ones with less depth, I think they have almost not crawled to the line for this period anyway, but they're just going week to week and just trying to survive, trying to do as best they can to pick up the points. And maybe there's not really a conscious effort to try and secure themselves and tighten their defenses during this period. And they just have to roll out the same strongest possible 11 every single week. And that's where you start to get a bit fatigued, because they are on their asses a bit, to be honest. So those are the type of teams I'd look out for. Palace, I mentioned earlier, very well drilled, but they've also been throwing out the same 11 week on week. So I do just wonder if it's going to go the other way for them this year, even though they are a well drilled, well prepared defense. So very interesting one. I think it's very annoyingly team dependent. I think a team like Arsenal could end up keeping, if anything, more clean sheets during this period. But then you've got maybe Crystal Palace, maybe Wolves, Brentford, Bournemouth that might not be able to, and it might just turn into a bit of a basketball match more often than not for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably about right. And we've really seen with Bournemouth the propensity for things to become a bit of a basketball match. Long may that continue, actually, because the games are really, really exciting. I'm hoping that Brentford game also goes the same way. Just final word on this, something that kind of came to mind as you were speaking, FPL transfer market. Surely as well. We've seen it happen with Foden recently, and Ekitike's rise has been meteoric. I mean, I'm probably going to spoilers how to make transfers tonight, just to like lock in the price as it is, to ensure that I'm not priced out of later moves that I'm looking to make, like even tentative later moves I'm looking to make. And if we've got 1 day's gap, I mean, obviously people will straight away start to make transfers on the day of a game occurring. People will start to make transfers. I mean, trying to keep a level head here has to be something which we prioritize, and picking and choosing your battles in terms of when we go early. I see there's a bit of a chat as well about this going on in the chat as well here, so
Yeah.
I think it's worth referencing. Like, when you let something happen, when you let a drop occur because you want to gather more information, and when you kind of take the trade-off and go in a little bit early, something like that really always comes down to individual judgment, and that's the hardest bit almost. Like, we're not going to be here, I suppose, to not that you would want to get our advice on it, but we won't be here every throughout the Christmas, sadly, to do it because of schedules and having lives. And I suppose that's the hardest thing, when you go for it early and when you don't. I suppose it comes back to planning for me. Like, if I've got a very tentative plan through Christmas, because I know that things have got so much potential just to go, as we saw Bruno this week, and the poor souls who have gone there, who went there, who made their moves early. Like, there is so much propensity for things to go wrong, but I suppose it's just weighing up the value of that information. That information is going to be scant too, and it's hard to come to like a solid solution of like, there's no guideline you can possibly give, is there, really, on what you should always do. Like, in a normal situation, we'd always say information is key, information is more valuable than 0.1 million price rise. But this time, I suppose we're going to look at it and be like, yeah, I mean, maybe it is worth, there's more games tomorrow, but maybe it is worth me bringing this player in, because next week I may want to get this guy who's about to embark on a good run of fixtures, and this could bug me up if I don't go for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game at this point of the year. It's what do you do? And Nobby in the chat as well mentioned the trade-off between information and value. That is ever more important at this time of the year. And it's a really difficult question to get the right answer for, because every situation is slightly different and everyone's team is slightly different as well. Like, I might be able to hold off tonight if I really want to, because I've got about 0.3 wiggle room, but that could also have a cascading effect later on in the season. I might want that extra 0.1 at some point. So moving early does have significant benefit, but it's also the intangible benefit, I suppose, of getting that extra information. You just don't know what you don't know. And I said it earlier on, and not as a sort of hard and fast rule that you just wait till the last minute and gather all the information, but more if you've got that physical availability that you're not certain on a move, or there's something that could still go wrong and you're not going to get locked out of something that you just genuinely know that you want to do. I would at least try to wait for as long as you can. And obviously, look, we're all human. We'll all move early at certain points. I've done it this season. I'm sure other managers, other really even analytical managers, will move early at times as well. But during this period, I given that there are games almost every day, I think you mentioned there's only 4 days where there isn't a Premier League game on between now and the 8th of Jan, or between Boxing Day 8th of Jan. I think it is as important as it can be to try and gather that information. Can you move early? Absolutely. Can it work? Also, for sure. That people who moved early on Foden, absolutely loving life. People who moved early on Ekitike last week, also loving life. But we've already seen this game week what can happen. It won't always happen. It's actually probably quite rare that it will. But what can happen if people move early and then the next day there are still Premier League matches and a big player goes down injured, one that you wouldn't expect to happen either. So yeah, I wish I could give like hard advice of, yeah, do this or do this. You've got to feel it out. It's basically on gut. I'm a manager who likes to wait for the most information because I hate it. Really can't stand it when I've moved early and then something goes wrong and it would have opened up a different route for me that I can no longer take. I personally find that really difficult. Other managers find the other side of it really difficult, where it's I've missed out on a player because I didn't move early. And I've also been bitten by that before, but it's picking your poison. It's figuring out which one you can live with more. And I can live with the former, not the latter, more. And it's just a personal thing for me.
Maybe. I suppose for me, my big issue is, there is action bias sometimes, and I'm trying to weed myself off it. But there's also sunk cost as well sometimes, where like I really want moves in 2 weeks, and I'm kind of a zero point 0.3 wiggle room, and I know one of the players that I want to sign is going up, and that is impacting on the move in a couple of weeks' time. So, for example, next week I want to move Semenyo up for Cunha, not this week, next week. And if I do Ekitike, if I leave it, then Bruno's going to fall and all this sort of thing, and my wiggle room goes down, and that could have unintended butterfly effect consequences in 3 or 4 weeks, where I'm 0.1 million off. I could have gone for a 4.3 million midfielder rather than 4.4. All this sort of thing can impact the future. But I think what Mark said last week about kind of being in survival mode is kind of key for me here as well. That the market's going to go mad. We're going to have lots of kind of unintended random effects. If you can do nothing, do nothing. But there are going to be a few things that immediately are going to be of a lot of interest to us. And most of all, just try to enjoy it. I know it's going to be potentially could be quite stressful, but just try to enjoy it as much as you possibly can, and know that most people are also going to be, apart from those who get stupidly lucky with one random punt coming off, in a very similar, if not the same boat, where you're like, okay, well, that's happened, let's move on. And luckily, because the game weeks turn around so quickly, you haven't got that much time for it to fester. You can just be like, right, okay, clean slate, let's get on to the next one. But there
So
we
true.
go. Yeah. All right. Okay. And onto kind of the moves that are being made out there. The Christmas red zone moves to the Christmas players in red who are dominating the discourse. Bruno Fernandes, broken down, Sam. Let's have a quick moment of silence for those managers who used all their free chances on Saturday before Bruno got injured on Sunday.
That is unlucky, though, isn't it?
Pray for
Of
their
all
FPL
players.
souls. I mean, FPL Harry's done it, so we know exactly what's going to happen here. We know that he sold Saka. We know that Saka's going to play full 90 against Palace and then not play against Brighton, maybe come off the bench, get injured, and then he'll be out for the rest of Christmas, and Harry will come out smelling of roses. That's it is known at this point. But I mean, the latest news is, according to the Tory graph tonight, is that Bruno is going to be out for around a month. A press conference that is on Boxing Day, but even though it's Bruno, I think, Sam, we can be 99% sure. Yes, memories of him with his leg in a cast. I think we can be 99% sure that he's a goner and it's time to act, right?
Yeah, I hate to say it, because in a couple of days we could look oh so stupid if we say this and then he's fine in classic Bruno terms, but yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, he looked genuinely shocked at himself when he picked up the injury. Like, he didn't know how to react. He was on the ball and didn't even kick it out of play to begin with. He was like, what's this? Like, this is a new sensation I've never felt before. So yeah, it's a weird one, because he even played on for a bit and then also had a shot on goal, which actually in another world might have even gone in if it wasn't deflected. Like, it was almost like everything was okay and he'll just run it off. And when he didn't come out for the second half, it's never a good sign for someone as adamant to play the 90 as Bruno is. So yeah, I think sadly Amarim's quotes as well back it up. Quite a few rumors going around, and when it's so many different rumors from different sources on a big player like this, it's not a great sign. And I even saw an article today that Man United are in the market for a midfielder to cover him, which might indicate that it's actually a pretty significant layoff anyway. So yeah, unfortunately, it looks like the player that we all thought we could trust the most during this period, especially with great fixtures, is no longer trustworthy at all, and we need to move him on. But for every cloud, it does provide you with a pretty reasonable size of, a pretty reasonable amount of cash to use elsewhere for certain FPL forwards that look really interesting all of a sudden. And he is a bit of a cash cow for most people. I think about 50-60% effective ownership at my rank. So yeah, the majority have him and the majority will look at selling him, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so. And, we spoke last week about Ekitike, and at the time, Mark was saying he's not quite there yet, and you were voicing some very reasonable concerns. But we saw what happened in the game. Isaac has undergone surgery tonight, comes to Liverpool, so I think that is that for the Swede for quite a while. And what that Isaac injury has done is that Ekitike, aka Palindrome, has gone from maybe being a short-term pickup to a potential sort of mid or even long-term investment now.
Yeah,
Liverpool overall sit for XG this year, and I think that, although there were some questions that you guys raised last week about value in the forward line, we then have his potential being elevated by those X minutes going through the roof. And we've also got him kind of potentially being elevated now to talisman, and you've got those fixtures and nice gap. And I think all of those things, like, situationally, if you can do Bruno out, Ekitike in some way, shape, or form, I think all of those things point to him just basically becoming nicely ensconced into the FPL template in very short order, much like Phil Foden was. And I think the price rises underline that.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel quite similar to Phil Foden the other week. And also I will reiterate, everything I said on the pod last week still holds true in my mind for the forwards. I think there is just fundamentally less value in the forwards at the same price points than there is in the midfield. So that's a rule that I'm kind of keeping in the back of my mind. However, the situation has changed on Ekitike in particular because he's more locked in on minutes, given the Isak injury. It looks like a long layoff. So like you say, longer term pick. Whereas before I had my worries about the minutes being shared. So that's gone. And then the other thing is there are less and less midfielders that I'm interested in all of a sudden. Like, that player pool is shrinking rapidly. And when you've got someone like Bruno Fernandes going down, no one's really looking at taking that up to Cole Palmer yet. I mean, maybe one or two will take the risk, but his minutes are very debatable during this period, considering Maresca continuously says he's not ready to start multiple games a week. Well, he's not going to start all 4 then, is he? So most people are taking the money down, and there aren't that many. Like, there are a few options, but there's not like tons and tons around in the midfield that I'm desperate to get to all of a sudden. Whereas Ekitike, with good fixtures to come, good underlying data, and now the minutes as well, I don't think he necessarily needs to be good value to still be a good pick. And because we all have a fair bit of money floating around all of a sudden, Salah's not really in the game, Palmer's not really there yet, Gabriel's out for a bit still, and then obviously Bruno's now crocked too. Yeah, quite a lot of us have the money to get to Ekitike without having to even worry about the value equation of it all. And so I think the two things come maybe slightly, I guess they're parallel, but they don't have to impact each other. He can still be relatively average value, but still a good pick, considering we're not spending that money elsewhere too quickly right now.
Yeah, it is I suppose an interesting question in terms of what people are doing to get Ekitike in, and we're not going to cover him in form versus fixtures. I think we can do Ekitike's stats in a minute, but let's talk about Thiago a sec. So weird recent form. I guess over the last couple of games, him doing absolutely nothing in numbers versus those teams you'd expect him to bang against is very strange. So is he carrying an injury? Is he struggling with the volume of games? He's Brazilian. Is he getting tired because he didn't play very much last year? I actually asked FPL Dommy Tom, the Brentford correspondent, what he thought about this, because I thought that might be quite good, considering I could have whittled on and BS'd it, or I could have asked someone who actually watches Brentford's games. And Tom said over the last couple of games, him doing absolutely nothing in numbers is what is kind of just what you'd expect, I guess, because he's not really getting the service effectively. And he also said that these are teams that I suppose play in a way which doesn't particularly help. He doesn't have the service, maybe the type of game as well. We've had lots of possession versus Leeds and Wolves, and maybe we would have been better on the break versus them. Versus Bournemouth and Spurs, perhaps those teams are probably going to be a bit better. And he also mentioned that Damsgaard has missed the last couple of games from the start, and he's been kind of the best and most creative player. James on Planet also said Thiago perhaps isn't the best against the back 5. Bournemouth are up next, and Bournemouth are 19th for expected goals conceded away. Spurs not much better. And Tom concluded, if Thiago doesn't score a hat-trick, he will post nudes on X.
Wow.
That is what he said. That is, I've got proof that is what he said. So we'll be expecting to see that if Thiago doesn't score a hat trick. I think Thiago, Sam, is a weird one. I think that I've come to the conclusion now that I will be keeping him just because I've got a way to kind of keep him in the team, even though the value of a forward like that potentially is a bit of a question. But we've both spent the last couple of days looking through the midfield roster around that price. So 6.2 I've got Thiago in at, and I've got probably about kind of 7-ish to play with there. It's not looking great, is it, around there? So I don't know, it's a tough one, really. If it's the only way to Ekitike, I can dig it. But if you've got another route, like I have, it's worth considering it at very least.
I think you've summarized it well. I think there's been a bit of a overcorrection on everyone's views of him over the last 2 weeks because he's had no shots on goal. And fair enough, that's bad. Like, we all know that's bad. But do we honestly expect him to have no shots on goal in the next few games? No, not really. I mean, if he does that, I would be pretty shocked. And I'd definitely be selling him at that point if that is the case. But I think more, the reason that we're all looking at selling him is because there are all of a sudden a couple of other strikers that have just started flirting at you a little bit and like looking across at from the bar in your direction. Like Ekitike's looking kind of sexy, Bowen's looking interesting. It's because there are other options all of a sudden. If there weren't, Thiago, we'd be holding on to him. There are good fixtures. Bournemouth, Spurs, yeah, absolutely fine. And the fixtures continue for a while after that as well. It's not a rush to sell. And okay, granted, he's more expensive now, but that's not the price that most of us got him at. Like, we both got him when he was mid 6 millions at the worst. I can't remember exactly what I got him at, but it wasn't high 6 millions. It was fairly low. So I've got a load of value tied up in him. I don't really want to sell him because again, James's point on Planet FPL is a really good one. Against the back fives, he does struggle a little bit more. Not sure he's quite got the movement down to like manage to like cause problems for the 3 centre backs yet. With 2, it's a different equation. So I think next 2 games could absolutely be Thiago games, and all he needs is a penalty. And Brentford do win penalties, so it's not going to take much for people to regret selling him, considering the value that we've all got in him. The only thing I will say is I really do agree with your final point. If it's the only route to get to Ekitike, I can get on board with that. Like, I do still think Ekitike is a better pick over the next few weeks. If Isak was fit, I wouldn't even think about it. But Ekitike being the only centre forward of note for Liverpool right now, with Wolves up next, it does seem like a pretty decent opportunity. And given that given the Bruno news, most of us do have a pretty reasonable 2 transfer route to it. Not everyone, but a lot of us do. At worst, 3 free transfers. But yeah, if you've got an easy way of holding on to Thiago, I would try to do so, because I don't think he's an awful pick overnight. I think he's just had a couple of rough games that haven't really suited him. And most of us, I think we forget that we got him as a 6.5 million-ish striker. And if he's on 11 goals from 17 games, I mean, what do you really want from him? Like, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, for Ekitike, maybe.
Yeah. It's worth taking him, essentially. That's the thing. Like, we're looking for opportunities. I mean, I'm sure many of you have seen this week, the effective ownerships are all slightly stuck in the mud. Doing something like that could well be the ticket. If you don't believe that if you think Thiago has reached the end of the line, which I'm not necessarily sure on, based on the qualitative evidence, but if you feel like that he's reached the end of the line, or you simply back Ekitike to outscore Thiago in the next couple of games, then sure. It's worth taking that on and taking that opportunity. Can completely get behind that, and I think that probably is the way to go. It just feels like the kind of the template that we saw a few couple of weeks ago may end up dissolving a little bit. So we saw that Saka, Foden midfield, Haaland, Thiago. At the time, it was Mateta up front. It feels like Mateta's already kind of gone. We're pouring one out for him. Bruno's obviously gone. We're pouring one out for him as well. Saka under scrutiny. And then I suppose that Haaland's probably the last man standing on Foden, isn't he, really, with the rest of these players moving around. You've got a new incomer in Ekitike. It just goes to show, really, that, we have a couple of you tend to have like a couple of kind of fallow weeks in FPL every now and again, but things do kind of quickly start to unblock and move on as things sort of change. I've just seen that Harry Wilson's potentially injured himself, but he has got a yellow card. So, yeah, fun times.
Yeah, it's funny because the template looks so strong this time last week, and now at least 2, possibly even 3 of them are shifting about quite quickly. And yeah, I mean, we're in live time. Who knows what's happening with Wilson, but he's heavily owned as well. So if that's a problem, by the time you listen to this pod, if you're not watching live, then it might not be. I don't know. But it is just funny how quickly things change in FPL. And I think it's that meta point of we just don't know what we don't know. Like, new information comes to light very, very quickly as soon as matches are played. With so many rounds of matches being played during this period. Coming back to our original point on the pod, I think like hoarding that information and acknowledging that things will change quickly and that you want as much flexibility as possible to be able to deal with that is quite important at this point. Right now, Ekitike looks amazing. He's picked up 5 goals in 3 games. What more can you want? But all it's going to take is another week where maybe he gets injured against Wolves. You just don't know. Or in the chat, people are saying, well, yeah, no Salah, no Szoboszlai, no Gakpo against Wolves. Maybe Liverpool look really blunt up front. And all of a sudden, Ekitike doesn't look like such a great pick. And he's probably around about 9 million at that point. Do you hold on, even though the Wolves game's out of the way? You know, things can change very, very quickly. So I think it's just that acceptance of we don't know what we don't know and just trying to have as much flexibility baked into your plan as possible, acknowledging that, okay, I've got a great plan, really happy with how this maps out if things go according to the way I think it will, but knowing that with any given game week's worth of information, things can change very quickly. And a template one week can be completely thrown in the bin the next week, potentially.
Yeah. And again, that kind of links back to what we were saying earlier on about the whole kind of madness of the festive schedule. What does Ross always say? He has to be a dynamic and adaptive manager, one of his sort of mantras in life. And I think that kind of is one of those things that we need to do here. And I suppose that Ekitike, and it just feels like a bit of a fortuitous moment. There will be some out there who look at it and think, well, you know, everyone's doing that, I'm going to go against it, which is fine, which is absolutely fine if that's the way you want to play a game. But in this case, it just feels like, yeah, it's the most exciting pick almost, Sam, is it? It's kind of like you're just covering your butt. But yeah, sometimes, as FPL General said last week, you just got to do what you need to do to survive. And in this case, if you want to eat, you're probably going to have to go for Hugo. Let's move on to the shopping list, aka form versus fixtures. One last time, the last minute shopping list. So if you're dashing down to the high street tomorrow, oh my lord, it's Christmas on the 25th. I've done nothing so far. Sam and I, good partners. I'm sure we've both got all of our presents done.
Yeah.
Ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. I did. I absented myself and did loads of rapping the other day, so I'm good. Not very good rapping, mind. I'm not very good at rapping. I'm not the most practical.
That's fine. It's the thought that counts.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, you know, I always say my bad rapping is more fun to unwrap. Like that's the selling point, lads or ladies. If you're not very good at rapping, or other people, of course, if not very good at rapping, you just say, okay, you know, it's just for fun. It's great fun to unwrap a terribly wrapped present. We've all had those presents that, you know, an indoor has given you or something like that, which wraps like perfectly, but they take forever to unwrap because you're like, oh my God, Viv, what have you done here? This is ridiculous. And you're ripping off, and then you rip off a bit of sellotape and you rip off a bit of the book or something. Anyway, Christmas shopping, form versus fixtures, Ekitike right at the top, significantly overperforming now, Sam. 3.5 non-pen XG, but minus XG, second behind Morgan Rogers for that. Although Morgan Rogers' XGOT is actually really good. We'll talk about that in a minute. As I mentioned last week, Ekitike has never really done this in his career before, but he's barely played much for last year. So his previous best from 21-22, when he got 15 starts for Reims before he went into the PSG wilderness. The analog stats are all right. You know, he's last 6 weeks, 5th for shots amongst strikers, 3rd for chances, 4th for shots on target. It's not like, you know, standout. And Liverpool's team XG, again, isn't standout. You're not looking at it and being like, oh my Lord, you know, they're about to completely put a team to the sword. But it just feels like with Ekitike, they're just going in at the moment, and you probably want to be on that ride, given the situation that we're in right now with you know, the context with Bruno being injured. He's also 3rd for bonus, so a goal for him is basically a 7-point goal at the moment, which again is something that's worth bearing in mind. Wolves, Leeds, and Fulham, as we've mentioned, the next 3. 2 of those 3 at least are very, very good on paper.
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect storm, isn't it, really? Like you've got the form, you've got the fixtures, you've got the minutes more locked in than ever. And although Liverpool aren't at their full flowing attacking best from seasons past, we know that they've got the quality to turn it on if they really do get it all together. They've got plenty of star power in there. So yeah, I mean, it's the only thing that could put me off is like the value for money equation that I mentioned earlier. Like, is there a better way of spending that money than throwing it on a forward who probably almost certainly won't be on penalties? He's got a pretty awful Watkins-esque record on penalties so far. So I doubt he'll take them. Probably McAllister's ahead of him, Szoboszlai, maybe one or two others. I don't know. That's that with the price point could be enough to put me off, especially if you got the Wolves game out of the way. If you didn't move for him this week, I think you could make an argument to say he'll be 9 million. The best game of the bunch is probably gone, barring the Burnley game, but that comes after Arsenal. You've got to wait quite a while for that. Leeds, Fulham, Arsenal in a row. Maybe you could wait. But I think if you go in now and you've got the money straight from Bruno and you're taking it down naturally enough anyway to be able to fund Ekitike, it does make sense. And there is the bandwagon element where Harry, one of the best managers we all know, he rarely puts himself in a position to get unlucky. Like if there's a bandwagon, he tends to be on it fairly quickly because, okay, they're a good pick, obviously, but also there is an ownership equation here where you don't want to put yourself in a position where you back a player to do pretty well and you don't own him against a large majority of a crowd. And Ekitike is going to become that, very much like Foden was recently. And if he does continue to haul, and he's got the fixtures for it, no doubt, then the price could get a bit carried away. Like it could run up to 9.5 quite quickly. And it could get very, very painful very fast, especially if Thiago has another game week without a shot on goal, which I doubt will happen, but it could. And the crowd swell towards Ekitike could be quite painful if it continues to go the way that we think it is going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just... Yeah, it's a bit like the Bruno thing where you say get it done, but you're saying getting it done from a different perspective, where you're kind of saying that this is just the game, unfortunately, and not many people will like it, but that's just the way it is. Also at Liverpool, before we move on to your man next, Florian Wirtz, yes, one assist recently, but Phil Foden, people said about him before he went on his run a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Last 6, I did have a look. Got to say the underlying data isn't up to much at the moment. Odegaardy, but I said that about Phil as well, didn't I? Not a high volume player in the Bundesliga as well, classically, as I think that you said in pre-season. But next to, I mean, sure, he did leave the field due to what seems to be cramp. Did get that assist was kind of quite irregular. It was a smart pass, but it wasn't like absolutely Ozil-esque. But one little thing, because Szoboszlai isn't available, he did take pens for Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. So could he, for 1 week only, be on them with Szoboszlai injured? Yeah.
McAllister, though?
Potentially a feather in the potentially, but I mean, who might need the goal a bit more?
Yeah,
maybe I'm thinking of
0-0.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of my Arsenal hat on there, where we give out penalties like confetti, don't we? Maybe Liverpool be more professional about it, but there's just something there. But I don't know. I quite like the idea of a short-term punt. If you've got a lot of transfers kind of hanging around, I quite like that. I wish I could do it. I can't do it this week, unfortunately. But yeah, one to consider, maybe, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I still quite like Szoboszlai from next week onwards because he's a bit cheaper. So yeah, I don't mind Wirtz, but I don't know whether I want to go triple Liverpool attack deep. And he is still quite expensive for someone that hasn't got the output yet. What I will note is his output is around the same. His XGI data is around the same as Foden's was when he went into his run. So we do have that history. We know that it's possible for a player of that sort of caliber with that sort of data to go on a bit of a tear. I really don't hate it. And if Cunha didn't exist, I think I'd be more convinced that he's the guy. I'll just quickly round off topic because it's been discussed in the chat. When I say unlucky, a position to be unlucky, what I mean is in terms of ownership. So I don't mean, Bruno going down. Like, obviously, we don't know that that's going to happen, or Wilson. We're not putting ourselves in a position to get lucky or unlucky there. It's more with Ekitike in mind. The ownership's rising very, very quickly. It's a bit of a bandwagon. And if you've got that effective ownership multiplier against you as well, you're putting yourself in a position of higher variance against the crowd. That's what I mean. So anyway, moving on from that, just in case I didn't summarize that well. Wirtz is a player that will be differential. It's putting yourself in a position to get lucky, I suppose, from one angle, because you're going to get the benefit of 90% of his points, you would think, whereas Ekitike much less so. So yeah, I can see the arguments for Wirtz for sure. I just don't know if I prefer him over Cunha. And that's the problem for me. I think given that they're now at the same price, and given Cunha probably will take penalties for Man United for the foreseeable, and with also pretty good fixtures over the next few, I think I'm more confident on him, especially because it's more goal threat than assist threat for Cunha, whereas it's the reverse for Wirtz generally. And that does make a bit of a difference too, right?
Yeah, that's where we land, I think. That you're looking for those goals, and you might see that Wirtz now plays as 9.5 behind Ekitike. Last year he played behind Patrick Schick, who is a decent, if slightly limited, forward, and ran riot in the Bundesliga. The year before especially ran riot. So that could really kind of up his potential both for goals and assists. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens, especially if Frimpong as well, who's a bit of a speedster, does kind of end up on the other side as well. That could be really, really sexy indeed. I mean, it could end up being a genius move. I really wish I could do it. I can't. So I would have been potentially. I'm not very far off, but I am not in the position to quite do it. But if I could have got a midfield potentially of Saka, Cunha, Wirtz, Foden, and maybe Wilson or whatever, that would have been nice if I could have got everybody, but unfortunately it's not going to happen. Can't quite get there. And I think that, as you say, Cunha will speak about in a second. Let's talk about him now, actually, and move on to your man in a sec. Sorry, Sam, I know you're dying to talk about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Let's talk about Cunha for a second. The Man United asset over Christmas. Well, I mean, everyone's going there, aren't they? Let's face it. I mean, certain members of this podcast may have already gone there in of themselves. He's not actually quite yet in the top 5 transfers in for this week. He's actually behind Semenyo for transfers in, behind Rice, who we'll speak about in a minute, behind Harry Wilson, who's got 200,000 transfers in, 130,000 transfers in for Cunha. He's actually had the most shots in the box of any mid over the last 6 game weeks, propelled himself up to 21st overall for underlying data, which is good because he's missed quite a lot of games. Second for Foden for XG, and 4th behind Bruno, Foden and Anthony Gordon, the multiple midfielders for XGI for the last 6. Last year versus Wolves, he scored 3, got 1 assist in this period, so he can do it. And he last year carried a team in this period, which is probably about the same level as Man United. So he's got the ability to carry a terrible team. Maybe this is going to be his year again. I mean, I think this week I'm very tempted. Well, I think this is coping with me because I can't quite do it. But I think there's an argument this week that it might be quite good to see how Man United do against Newcastle without Bruno. But I think Wolves and Leeds next up, that is just it's very difficult to overlook that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's there's obviously an argument to say without all of the players that they would normally rely on, Bruno and Burmo, Ahmad, they're going to suffer as a team. I'm sure they will. It will be harder work for them. So far this season, their data has been actually really good from an attacking point of view. So yeah, up to now, I've been pretty bullish on the Man United attack. Without all of those players, that's all going to drop. It will inevitably go down a fair chunk, but they've got better than average fixtures over the next few. Newcastle aside, well, once that's out the way, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, that's a really nice run. I'd only really be interested in owning him for that 3 anyway, probably moving him on after that. And like you mentioned, I mean, I don't think you'll earn too many Man United fans as listeners for saying that. But
they know it's just
they know. But yeah, if he's in a team where it's going to revolve a little bit more around him all of a sudden, I don't think that's a bad thing for him necessarily. I think he'll do better on the bonus points because usually Bruno's just a hoover and Burmo's not bad on it either. Without either of them in the team, if Cunha does anything, it will probably be him getting those 8-point goals again, like we've seen in the past, or 7 points last year, but he'll get the maximum bonus from it more often than not. They tend to concede as well, so defenders aren't going to be stealing bonus from him. So I think if he's more the focal point and there's more responsibility of him to take the game by the scruff of the neck, even if Man United as a team are worse, I think it can still mean that Cunha is slightly better, and he'll probably get better pen share as well. In fact, he will get better pen share because Bruno took them. So his pen share will go up. Whether or not he absolutely takes them ahead of Sesko or Mount, I don't know for sure. I would care to wager he does, but I don't know that. I think given that he's got the XG data ticking upwards very quickly at the moment, he's taking a lot of shots recently. I think Rodgers took 7, he took 6 in the most recent match. We'll come on to Rodgers, I'm sure. Yeah, I really like him. I think he's a good pick for the short to medium term. And then after Burnley's out the way, you can look at using him as a bit of a cash cow again. And who knows, maybe Bruno's fit again by that point, and we can look at getting him back. But yeah, that's how I feel. I really like him, and I would like him as my Bruno replacement.
Yeah, I think he's like, I've got next week. I'll have Smenyo to remove, and I will have a bit of a choice in him and Gordon, who I have a very checkered history with. I'm not going to lie. 2 assists last week against Chelsea. I think he's good for 60, 70 minutes a game, Anthony Gordon, on penalties, but you know, those Mins issues are quite telling. And I it's one of those where I think I'll think about it a bit more next week and talk about it a bit more on Saturday. But for me, it's one of those that I'm just not 100% sure on right now. One player I am 100% sure on, again, we'll come to Dominic Calvert-Lewin in a minute, Sam. For God's sake, stop messaging me about it. Morgan Rodgers. I think that, you know, just talking to what you were saying, it feels like he's the guy who takes over from Cunha later on. That's kind of like dyed in the wool. Most plans that I've got are like Cunha for the 3 weeks and then on to Mr. Indestructible Morgan Rodgers. Has he caught the Foden flu, Sam? 4 goals from 1.3 XG last 2 games. Is this sustainable? Discuss.
I'd love to say it's not, but he is a hell of a finisher, isn't he? Like, those goals, again, he's taking them all so well at the moment. It like all logic would suggest it's not sustainable, right? But I don't know how scientific it is, because I haven't really done the research into this data point as much. But the post-shot XG numbers are far better than just the average XG numbers for him, which suggests the quality of his shooting is much better than the average you'd expect from those positions, from those chances. Which, again, maybe it's not the best way of looking at it, but it's another data point that I will take into account with a player like him, because I think we've seen for long enough now that he has been overperforming for not just this season, but also last season as well, that, yeah, maybe it is worth just accepting that he is a slightly better than average finisher. It's difficult to do so because even Erling Haaland technically runs at about his underlying XG numbers across his career, or at least since he came to the Premier League. I think he's almost spot on for it. But yeah, maybe he's just really good at taking shots from in and around the edge of the box. And the only thing that puts me off, I hate to say it, but the next 2 fixtures just aren't good enough for me. And I will look at him after that. And Chelsea, Arsenal away from home. He obviously he can score, he can get goals in those games. I'm not saying he can't, because he's obviously excellent and everything he's doing is working. But I think even if Salah had those 2 games, I'd be hesitating. So yeah, I'll probably wait and regret it, because he'll probably score braces in both of them as well.
Possibly. I mean, it's basically from the first game week in 2026 all the way until the end of February. They don't play a team apart from Newcastle in the Champions League. It is a ridiculously good run, and Villa are on a good run. He's Mr. Indestructible. I am very interested, but I'm very interested after the next 2 games, because on the balance of probability, evidenced by the numbers, with the 2 of the Spurs defenses of them all coming up next away from home, it just feels like he's not quite right for me. If I'd the time to get on him probably was before this, but you know, there is similar logic to Ekitike for some people. You know, if they're going in and Villa on it, you do it. It's just the next 2 games, you wonder whether that's going to still continue to be the case. I don't know. I'm willing to leave it for now, and be a late adopter if need be. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Final midfielder, sorry, Sam, I know we're going to get on to Calvert-Lewin, but Declan Rice. A lot of people's enabler for Ekitike via selling Saka have done so already. Of interest, if you've not tripled on Arsenal, as you said to me the other day, he keeps housing points, basically. But it's so true. 8 DEFCONs over the last 6. He's equal third for DEFCON once midfield the season long, doing all right in terms of shots and all this sort of thing. But his key attribute is baseline bonus. He and Elliot Anderson over the last 6 are a long way ahead of everybody else. And season long, he and Bruno Fernandes are the only 2 mids to have over 300 rating for this. So basically, you're looking at a deluxe Elliot Anderson than Rice, who has better players to score the chances he creates and a bit of a better chance of scoring goals, maybe. He's got a bit better quality than Anderson, perhaps taking those shots. And yeah, with DEFCON to boot. Like, as a set and forget, I can't fault it whatsoever. And there's definitely, Sam, I suppose, a real question about whether Rice plus 3 million is better than Saka, who's a bit more boom and bust.
Yeah, there really is. And honestly, you had me at Elliot Anderson, but deluxe. That has really sold me on him. That's all I need to know. Yeah, I mean, before the Bruno injury, I was seriously debating doing what a lot of managers did and doing Saka down to Rice to fund Ekitike and little bits elsewhere as well. It would have been helpful for my back line too. I think normal play across the season, so like normal game weeks, week to week, I probably don't think it's a move I would normally make. I still think the upside is there for Saka. He hasn't quite shown it this year, but the data's still there. He does hit the odds DEFCON. He's got penalty share. I know people won't want to hear it, but he probably will take the next penalty, I think, anyway. So I don't love the idea of selling Saka ever, but if there ever was a point where you could use that money to bolster your 15 and give yourself a bit more depth, also get to Ekitike as well, who we've talked about already, and probably guarantee yourself better minutes in that Arsenal midfield for this really busy period. I think now, if ever, is the time to look at it, because like you say, if he gets anything, like if he even gets DEFCON, he's got a chance of maybe hitting bonus as well in a game that's fairly low scoring. So yeah, he is obviously good value for money. I obviously mentioned he always finds some sort of way of getting jammy points, but I don't mean that in a bad way. If anything, that's a massive compliment, because Bruno's got the same thing where he's got a lot of like millions of different slightly unlikely ways of winning points, but because he's got so many of them, it almost makes it quite likely that he gets at least one of them coming in every single week. Rice is a little bit like that, minus the penalties. He's a tiny bit like Bruno, much worse data to be fair, but he's on the set pieces. He does have some attacking threat and he's got better DEFCON. So yeah, I can see why a lot of managers have considered Saka down. I also think, for what it's worth, that Saka's minutes over this little period might not be perfect. We've already seen him rested in the Brentford game when they played 3 times in a week. Then we've got 4 times in 14 days. I think it's fairly likely that Saka misses minutes. And Rice, I mean, you mentioned to me that maybe even he will, and that is absolutely fair enough. But I think out of the 2, if one was going to, it would probably be Saka for me. Rice still not impossible to. But the nice thing about Rice is that even if he does miss minutes, because he's cheaper, you've probably got a stronger bench or a stronger 15 to help you cope with that. With Saka, if he misses minutes, from history, from personal experience the other week, it's pretty painful when that happens, because you don't have as much depth and you do start looking at your bench thinking, I don't really want Joe Rodon coming on here. Like, I'd prefer someone a little bit better. So yeah, maybe it's worth doing. I'm considering it as part of a triple swap as well. I am thinking about it.
Yeah, I feel you. I think that is a very valid swap that I was considering. It's probably not going to happen now because I've only got 2 free transfers, but you've got 3. Hey, you know what? Can someone ring the team dependent bell? But yeah. I think that you given voice to that really well. I think just generally as well. I said this to you the other day, and I kind of mentioned it a slight bit last week. Arsenal generally, I feel like what I said to you in the voice note, we're going to be in slightly, similar to what Martin their manager is going to be like. I think Arsenal are going to be in maybe survival mode over this period, just due to the sheer number of games on the docket and due to the sheer number of players that we've got in different zones, the red zone, the yellow zone, the green zone. I feel like, if I didn't have Bruno to get rid of this week, Saka would be the option that would go. And obviously, we noticed that Harry has sold him, which is probably likely to be the genius move of our times. my feeling is that, we're going to be, and I was saying something the other day that I was watching the Everton game and my partner was just saying, why are you getting so annoyed? And it was just kind of like, we were just in control, it was very kind of strangle football. Complete control of the game, which was good to see after the Wolves game. But equally, we just didn't seem like we were looking to. We were obviously looking to score, but it wasn't like chance after chance after chance. It wasn't a siege. It was very much sort of like, it wasn't a siege as in we were trying to break down the barricades. It was very much a siege as in like we were sitting off and starving the opponent out. And I feel like that might be what we look to do over Christmas. And Saka maybe will be the guy who comes up with the goods to make us win 1-0. Or, as we saw in the Wolves game, he was the guy who basically kind of presaged the win. But with 3 million difference in Saka and Rice, it does feel like to me the calculus is, I'm not selling Saka now because I've got other things to do. But if that's your way to do it, I'd be more than fine. I'd be completely behind somebody moving crabbing from Saka to Rice, making a bit of money and using that to meet your goals with whatever you're trying to do. So fine, absolutely fine. Calvert-Lewin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sponsored by FPL Price's YouTube channel.
Hang on.
The top striker in Europe now. Look at the underlying data, Sam. He's 11th overall for underlying data over the last 6. He's second to Haaland for XG. He's got more XG per shot than Haaland. Is he overperforming? Not really. Only 0.4 overperformance. And over the last 6, he's had second. He's second for shots on target, just behind Haaland. Second for big chance. He's got a bigger conversion. I just think back to, there was one YouTube comment which I didn't respond to a little while ago, which is just like, I remember one person said, if we lose credibility for recommending Calvert-Lewin, well, your man has proven them wrong, Sam, hasn't he?
My man. Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty incredible little run of form for him. I'm happy for him. He's obviously got a bit of Premier League pedigree. He's been incredibly frustrating. He's been the butt of most jokes for the last couple of seasons. So yeah, it's nice to see him scoring some goals. Decent value. We think he's on penalties when he's on the pitch. Ticks a lot of boxes. Like, he's a perfectly good player at that price. I will always say at that price, because if he was any more expensive than this, not a chance. Even though he's on a bit of a hot streak, I've been burnt way too many times by him. The other thing that is really important to note here is the fixtures are awful. So I'm not going there. Absolutely no chance on earth I'm looking at him right now. If this run of form continues, or if he continues at a fairly decent rate between now and the end of the season, there will come a time where I consider him again if he's getting the minutes and this hasn't tailed off completely. But right now, not at all. And he could score in the next couple. It's possible. But yeah, a bit like with Rodgers, if I'm not tempted to go for Rodgers this week, I'm definitely not tempted to go for DCL. And you mentioned, okay, he's finally not underperforming. He's finally almost, well, I suppose by his standards, he is actually overperforming, because we're so used to him underperforming dramatically that he's just probably on a bit of a hot streak by his standards, even though he's just basically just applying the XG into output for once. But that feels like massive overperformance for him. So yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned Nobby. We've just highlighted. I mentioned Rodgers there as well for the exact same reason. I'm not going to be going there right now. When the fixtures are better, absolutely. Right now, I mean, if you're on a wild card, maybe as a third forward, I kind of get it, because he's cheap and it's a nice player to be having like in your squad to rely on. Not over 4 or 5 other forwards right now for me. So not making it in right now. Sorry to let down all of my fellow DCL fans.
Simon's crying. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. The only other thing here is the cheap mids, which I've sort of missed off before we move on to the one defender we've got on the roster. Some people are looking for cheap mids. I spent my Sunday night looking at Freddie Potts versus Lewis Miley.
Exciting.
I'm a cool man, Sam. I'll give my verdicts. I'm sure that's the lure to keep you listening. But I'll give my verdicts at the end. Enzo Lafie or Elf, a good Christmas present for some people. Highly rated on review, I said last week on penalties. He's on 4 yellows, as is Xhaka. So said on Blue Sky the other week, I was on Alcaraz, but he's in jail for me after also dropping a stinker. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cheap mids that people could be looking to remove Bruno for. I don't know. I think a lot of it kind of is dependent hugely on your planning going forward. I mean, Lafie, I think for the Leeds game is absolutely fine, and if you can kind of hide him on your bench after that, cool, whatever. But I think for me, you're probably looking at going all the way down to Potts. So I wouldn't go all the way down to like a Devaney or something at 4.3. Defender wise, I've got Michael Keane on here, need defender here. One thing that I was really surprised by is, fifth for DEFCON this year, decent number of headed attempts, etc., etc. Everton are actually fourth from bottom for XGC.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's very strange. I let me just double check that's right, but I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, what do you make of that? It is right. I mean, I've got Tarko. I'm gonna have to just the cockroach that will never be squashed. He's going to just stay for now. The fixtures are very good, and Sean Norton, who's the Everton correspondent, was saying, Brantford is on the grass and all this sort of thing. But over the next few, surely Michael Keane, the goal scorer, is fine if you're looking for an enabler in defence, right?
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous about Michael Keane. I wish I was confident enough to buy him because it would be a really easy solution for me. But I wouldn't have to have any money spare. Could move Lacroix or Anderson. Probably more likely Anderson. I don't really fancy losing Lacroix right now. Over to Michael Keane, but I am worried that at some point relatively soon, maybe not for this Christmas period, but not too long after that, there's a good chance that he might lose his place. Some people are suggesting that he's played well enough that Branthwaite will have a bit of a mission to get the spot back from him, which is absolutely fair enough. I'll do a bit more digging on that to see how Everton fans feel, see how close Branthwaite is, but it just feels like a potential problem fairly soon. And I want the Everton defender for this quite long period of fixtures where they do look like a good hold. So I never want to be looking at the team sheet worried about Branthwaite's availability. So I think if you can afford it, I would still go for Tarko. If Branthwaite has a setback, immediately Michael Keane is the guy. And I'm looking at buying an Everton defender anyway pretty soon. Initially it was this week, but I think given the amount of other transfers I'm going to need to make, I'll probably make do without them. But at some point in the next 3 or 4 game weeks, I'm imagining I'll either buy Keane or Tarko. I hope it's Michael Keane because it's cheaper. He's slightly better or very, very similar on the DEFCON and on the attacking data. So I massively prefer to go for him. But by the time we get to that point, I'd be a little worried that I might only see him for a couple of game weeks before then having it as an issue. So I prefer to avoid that and another future transfer down the line. So yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, I would probably still be recommending Tarkowski over Keane.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a cheap defender, though, I mean, that's all right.
How long?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's difficult, really, if you're looking for a cheap defender, because Fulham's good run probably has come to an end. That's when you're looking at Anderson, who can kind of sit around for a while. Vandenberg maybe is kind of all right over Christmas. So they've got Bournemouth, Spurs, Everton, and Sunderland. I mean, Defconable 4.5 is kind of there. Wouldn't be looking at, I think popular ones like Cash and all this sort of thing. I know West Ham have got a good run coming up, but are you really going to be sat there thinking that you're going to be buying Kilman or Todibo, really? Probably not. And it is tricky. I'd almost maybe be looking at someone like Alderete at 4.0 at Sunderland.
Yeah.
And just thinking, I'm just going to go with that. I mean, Sunderland's defensive record is pretty good. So mid top half of the underlying data. But maybe if you're fishing in the cheap areas now, that'd be where I'd go. I mean, there would be some who would look at, like Coyote, maybe De Kuiper, or maybe even Dallo, but I suspect that'd be where I just go for like as cheap as possible player who's playing for a defensively solid team, who's getting the minutes and kind of just making it into a bit of a rotation. But I mean, realistically, unless you've got real fires to put out, as I've just said to someone in the chat as well, I wouldn't be pissing around with defense right now. I mean, chances are you've got def-connable defenders who have got okay fixtures. Just let that happen, let it be, and focus on the upside that comes from the midfielders and forwards.
Yeah, I massively agree. I mean, initially, if I had nothing else to do this week, I was looking at a defensive transfer just to optimize a little bit. But I think even defenders with not amazing fixtures now, if they're good on the DEFCON, they're holdable if you've got other fires. So yeah, you can put off those moves for a little bit, even with less than ideal fixtures for a week or two, if there are bigger, higher upside moves to make elsewhere. I wouldn't have a problem with that whatsoever. And it's something I'm doing as well.
Lovely. All right, let's move on to one we can punt then.
Yes, indeed. So mine was a little bit more successful than average. So I actually went with the player that I bought this week, Semenyo, bagged me 10 points. So very happy with that. And I'm up to 77 points now. So it's improving. I've got a few players not blanking in a row. So that's nice. Cherky.
I've just seen who you've chosen. Yeah, I've just seen who you've chosen. Sorry.
Yeah.
But we both versus old club narrative seems to be coming into play here. We've chosen both the Everton centre halves, haven't we?
We have indeed. I took one look at yours and I was like, whichever one he goes for, I'm going to go for the other one, because I knew you would. So yeah, the second you picked Tarko, easy, keen, straight in.
Yep, there we go. 110 to play 77. I mean, sure, they're going to be extra motivated to show Turf Moor what they've missed. I don't know. Right, moving on to captain. Haaland versus Ekitike, I think, is probably the one. I'm slightly torn on this one, Sam. Actually, I'm more torn than I thought I was going to be. Just because I think that there is potential kind of upside in what's going on with Liverpool, and because Wolves are so bad, there could be something in that. But one thing that I did research, an FPL risk on Blue Sky. The moment I looked this up, I kind of flipped over to Blue Sky and I saw the guy had written exactly kind of what I wrote. Anyway, so not that this matters that much. I'm sure you're going to shoot this down immediately, but Pep versus Dyche is just a ridiculous one-sided affair. So
to who?
Pep has played Dyche 18 times in the Premier League. He's never lost. 16 out of 18 victories, 2 draws. The goal difference is plus 46. 53 goals scored, 7 conceded. Obviously, that takes in spells at Burnley, Everton, and coming up Forest. Dyche teams against Pep are kind of a regular donor of points. And with Haaland in this particular form, just a Haaland form, which is kind of his normal, but for us, just stratospheric. I noted that his XG 16.4, is still higher than 4 teams in the Premier League, which is mad when we're approaching Christmas, including Spurs, which is quite funny. But yes, so even though you've got Ekitike, who's kind of okay in the online data, 25th, whatever it is. As I said earlier on, his online data is all right, and he's playing Wolves, who are second from bottom for XGC. It's going to take a mighty bit of cojones, surely, to back against Haaland this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to shoot down the Dyche thing. I think there are manager matchups that matter in FPL or in the Premier League. Like that, managers have styles of play and ways of, like Moyes has a terrible record against any of the big 6 historically, for example. Those sort of things I do pay attention to. What I would say about Dyche is most of those matches, he's had a pretty weak Premier League side that would normally be expected to get relegated. Normally, not always, but normally. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Pep's got a very good record against him specifically. Dyche does have a better team around him this year, so maybe it changes slightly, but the signals are still strong that it's a good matchup. Pep against a Dyche team seems to have his number a little bit, for whatever that's worth. And Haaland is Haaland. Yeah, I mean, he'll get good minutes. He's got great data. I think with Haaland now, I'm in a position where I need a really good excuse to go against him. Not just that there's a great player that's expected to do well elsewhere this week, but also, is there a really powerful reason to not want to captain Erling Haaland in the first place? Nottingham Forest doesn't scream that way to me. It's not a great fixture, but I'm not particularly worried about captaining him, and I think that's enough for me to just say, fine, leave it on Haaland. Don't overthink it. But yeah, I mean, Ekitike, I don't remember who said it in the chat, but someone mentioned if he was on penalties, I'd be even more tempted. But yeah, I just think you're too reliant on an open play going really well, and we've seen it in the past where you've got a one-off match. If penalties aren't a factor, it might not be enough. And if they have a bit of an off day at the office, then Ekitike might not get the service he needs. So yeah, I think, look, Ekitike is great. Would be really excited to own him this week. I think he'll do really well, but I need a really good excuse to go against Haaland in the form he's in. So I'll be captaining Haaland.
Yeah, devil's avocadoing. I'm probably the same, I think. But I mean, I completely understand if people are looking at it and thinking, you know what, this is another chance, a bit of a Saka one a little while ago, where you look at it and just be like, okay, well, this could be a week to take him on and target Wolves and go for it. And I understand that completely. I just think at the moment, it's just difficult to go Sterling. I just don't want to expose myself to that risk, especially over Christmas, you know?
Yeah. You want to be relaxed on Boxing Day, and then going into going against Haaland. There will be brave managers who do it, and maybe it pays off. Not for me this time. There will be weeks where I do it, but not this week, I don't think.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on to our teams then. We've somehow managed to go for an hour. We're going to end up going for longer than we had a guest on, Sam. This is ridiculous. Yeah. What's wrong with us? Right, so just get the guests out of the way. We don't want to talk to those guests. Yeah, you have your moment, mate. All right, no, I'm kidding. Love Mark. Right, okay. So yeah, you've got a few transfers to burn and a few ways you could possibly go, right?
Yeah, so I mentioned to you I might have moved last night. I didn't in the end. There was just something that told me I'll just wait a minute. Like, I can afford 0.1 swing on Cunha. So I'll run through my team first and foremost. Kelleher in goal at home to Bournemouth. Back four currently of O'Reilly, Timber, Lacroix, who I'm pretty happy with at home to Spurs. I think that's a good one. And then Anderson away at West Ham. Obviously just kept a clean sheet against Forest. In the midfield, I've got the injured Bruno, Semenyo, Saka and Foden. And then up top, I've got the two that everyone started this week with, or most people, Haaland captained, and Thiago as well. On the bench, I've got Anderson, the Nottingham Forest one at home to City, and Sunderland away for Rodon. So not bad bench cover, really. I think if I was being really passive, I could technically roll, but I'm not going to do that, clearly. Bruno's probably out for a while, so he will be going. I think in almost every universe imaginable, I will be buying Cunha in that position for Bruno. If Szoboszlai wasn't suspended, I'd be very tempted to go with him first and then Cunha next week for Semenyo. But what I'm probably going to end up doing is reversing those two moves, doing Cunha first because Szoboszlai is suspended. And I like Wirtz, but I don't want to have Wirtz and Szoboszlai next week. So I prefer to have Cunha and Szoboszlai and I can't do Wirtz and Cunha, if that makes sense. So I've basically chosen Cunha as my nominated man, even though he's not got a great fixture this week. So that move's probably going to happen. Then I've got two different paths I can look at. Number one is more simple. It would be by doing that move, I've got the money because I've already got 1.4 million in the bank, 4 free transfers to do so as well. So I've got the money with one extra transfer to move Thiago directly up to Ekitike, stick with a 4-4-2. My bench is just the same. Pretty good bench depth for not only this week, but in the future. Two relatively good starters, both decent on DEFCON, especially Anderson. You never mind having them off the bench. There is a slightly more aggressive play where I don't get rid of Thiago and I trade myself or switch myself into a 3-4-3, but with much better cover. So get rid of Mark Giu, get rid of Fernandes as well, but then also get rid of Saka, downgrade him to Rice, and then with that money, I can take Giu up to Ekitike and Fernandes down to Cunha. So that would put me into a 3-4-3 most weeks. But over this busy period, it removes two players that I have a gut feeling miss a match at some point, Thiago and Saka. Saka maybe not miss a whole match, but limited minutes, maybe in one or two of them. I think Rice gets good minutes throughout. I think Ekitike does. Sorry, Thiago would stay in this instance and probably move to Bowen, I should mention, next week. So that's what I mean by that one. But yeah, 3-4-3, better bench cover. I would have Anderson, both Andersons, Rodon as effectively my regular bench assets. And then the Fulham Anderson could go to Keane or Tarkowski easily with the free money that I've got, because actually removing Saka for Rice manages quite a lot of other upgrades elsewhere beyond even just the Ekitike move.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's a bit aggressive for me, because I don't love selling Saka, but it does maybe secure me for minutes through this period, a bit more bench cover, and it allows a few future upgrades as well. So, and also I'm not that sold on selling Thiago. Like I don't think I don't think he's a terrible player to be owning through this period, or especially for this match. And then I can sell him for Bowen if I want to next week or the week after, whichever. Yep. But the opportunity's there because I've got the money.
I feel like we're through just discussion on this on this show, homing in on the idea that selling Thiago, I mean, we're going to look stupid now, but selling Thiago could well be a mistake. And I think kind of obviously this is kind of obviously confirmation bias for me, because I'm likely to be keeping Thiago from, obviously you may have guessed from what I've said to you, but also what we've spoken about. And I just feel I like that going back to the 3-4-3. And I know that we've spoken about the value of the forwards, but I just feel like at the moment, I know that the Saka to Rice move might be a little bit awkward. I feel like it makes sense. The problem is that we don't have the information that, if you're listening back on Christmas Eve for some reason, you may have.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas. I like that move. I really do. Going back to 3-4-3, because that makes your team look a lot more solid. And it also from, in terms of how you're describing your bench and your and the depth that gives you, I feel like that just feels a lot better for me over this period, where you're probably going to be calling on your bench at least twice, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
I don't know. It feels like that's kind of the unsexy move, but it feels like that's the solid, sensible play, which maybe isn't kind of what most people are doing, but in some ways that might be quite good. In the engaged space. And I know that there's a few, like Oscar, for example, who's saying, I don't think it's time to sell Thiago yet. I know James said that on Planet as well. And I'm from looking at the data and speaking to you tonight, I definitely feel like I'm just not convinced that this is the time to sell. I know that it's been a bit frustrating couple of weeks, but it doesn't feel like quite the right time. And it feels like that's kind of the best point potential is in that kind of swapping around the structure once more. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, I'm looking at a 4-4-2 next week, and I think that or if Wilson's fit, a 3-4-3, but a 3-5-2. But I'm looking probably at a 4-4-2 with Anderson on the pitch or Chow on the pitch. I think that's probably going to be the way it goes. So yeah, I really love that 3-4-3. So Ekitike is rising tonight.
Yeah,
Bruno's falling tonight. I mean, are you convinced enough to confirm it, or thinking about what we were saying earlier, are you waiting to Boxing Day, do you think?
I'm gonna wait for at least tomorrow evening, because I want to see what happens in the Arsenal game. I kind of decided that during the pod when you were running through the turnovers. I think I've also had a look at, I've used planning tools to make sure I've got the spare money for everything I can foresee for the next few game weeks. I'd prefer to get this decision right rather than commit early and then think, if only I did the 4-4-2 strategy rather than 3-4-3. So I think I'm going to hold off tonight. I only lose another 0.1, but I've got enough spare. I think I've got 0.3 right now, so it'll be 0.2 after tonight. Spare on it, so I can wait. I don't want to leave it to Boxing Day, but I will probably leave it at least until tomorrow night. I mean, honestly, I could just do Fernandes to Cunha and roll it after that. Like, if I'm not going to get sucked into the Ekitike hype, this is a fine 4-4-2 for this week. It's just I do think that Ekitike is pretty great, and I do kind of want him. So it's whether, basically, would I prefer to sell Saka or Thiago now? Obviously, Saka has a better replacement, I think, than any Thiago one would, because effectively, if I get rid of Thiago, my third striker is Giu, whereas if I get rid of Saka, my third striker is Thiago. So, like, much better depth in the 3-4-3 version. Yeah, I mean, I could do anything between 1, 2, or 3 free transfers this week. But I've got 4 of them. I would like to hold on to as many of them as possible, because who knows, we could have another crisis this time next game week. So I'd like to do the path of least resistance if possible. But I do want Ekitike. So maybe the 2 free transfer move just to simplify it. I don't know. Anyway, long enough talking about my team. Let's move on to yours.
How did you do overall? Now the game is finished, by the way.
Almost grey. I think 81 points. So almost exactly grey arrow. I think I'm down on Focal's app, I'm down like 5k. Okay. So fine.
I hit safety. So I got a 5k green arrow. So it's number of, I can't know how to know.
What was your net points? 82?
83.
83.
Because so I think I don't know how many of that is in a row. Quite a lot in a row.
Nice. I can't boast that anymore.
12 in a row. So yeah, very lucky. Pretty the skin of my teeth, basically, with Anderson getting DEFCON, basically. Even though I got yellow card and Hilson got yellow card. So yeah, me for this week. I think I'm gonna just swap Gu for Ekitike and take Anderson down to probably Potts, just because he's probably got better minutes over the longish term than Miley. I'm not going to talk about this too much. I'm less likely to want triple West Ham than triple Newcastle at some point, so he's not going to kind of cut me off in case Newcastle go bananas and suddenly I want this. I want Gordon. I want all of that. So probably going to go with that. I've got 0.2 million price swap tonight, Sam, with Bruno dropping and Ekitike rising. That doesn't...
I just happen to be not going to lose value on Bruno tonight. Otherwise, I might consider doing it as well.
It doesn't cut me off Cunha next week. I'd end up with 0.4 in the bank if I do Semenyo to Cunha.
Yeah.
So it's not awful, but it just might be there's unintended consequences later. I just don't know. I just don't know whether I'm going to do it or not. Honestly, I have no idea. I probably need to figure it out next couple of hours.
How desperate are you for Ekitike? Are you absolutely certain?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely certain I'll be getting Ekitike, and I'm not gonna take that on. I've got no interest in not. I know the team is vaguely serviceable, but I've got no interest in taking that on. So I'll be going with those 2 moves for free. So I think that do I just risk it that Saka would be all right and Cape's all right and Raya's all right? Probably. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people in the same boat if an Arsenal defender gets injured, if Raya gets injured, if Saka gets injured. If I've got to take a hit, and so be it. But if they get injured, it's like the -4, but it's a hit that probably won't help me that much, because if I get Bruno and Saka injured, and I also want Ekitike, then surely it makes sense that I would then take those players out regardless. So that makes sense. So
absolutely.
It follows that logically it's probably going to be okay. I'm probably going to on-screen Wilson's in the team, see what happens. Nick was saying to me earlier on, I texted him what's going on with Harry. He's just an ice pack jobby, so it might be all right.
Oh, yeah,
But I've got Anderson who might come on, or Chow I could play. I don't know. I don't really
both fine. Like
exactly.
Even if Raya got injured, you've got Dubravka at home to Everton this week, so it's not like you are pretty well covered against any issues that arise tomorrow. So yeah, you could probably just, even if Saka did get injured, you could probably not do the -4 and just have Anderson coming off the bench if you wanted. It's not the worst thing in the world.
I'd probably just go Rice if Saka was injured, honestly. But I mean, it's going to be, it'll be what it'll be. I think I'll just do it. I'll end up with 1 million in the bank, which will give me enough for Semenyo across to Cunha next week. And I think that'll be me for a little while. Probably end up rolling up to 2 free transfers again, and then kind of taking my chances in game week 21 and try to find a way to Bowen, I think, then, and all this sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, the team looks quite good. So there's a lot of depth, and I think Potts is probably slightly better than Miley in that, if I need him, he's there. But I suspect I probably won't be playing him. The fixtures get good for them as well. If I ever am in a situation where I'm playing Potts, and I quite like the fact I'll be buying the Potty Palindrome this week. But yeah, I think it kind of is quite clear cut that I just go with the 3-4 back to the 3-4-3, and take it from there. I know Wilson's time in the team is coming to near an end. I've got space to kind of carry him for a little while if needs be, with Chow and Anderson on the bench, and I can just end up with Chow and Potts as the bench 1 and bench 2, which is fine. I think that's what I'll do. I think I probably will have confirmed this by the time most of you are listening to this. I mean, I think I'm somehow good. I still can't believe I managed to scam a green arrow out of this week. Honestly, that's ridiculous. I
got a penalty save clean sheet and I didn't. That's just awful. What am I doing wrong this year?
You'll still beat me by the end of the season, that's for sure.
I don't know if that's true. Just for reference, it's Semenyo to Cunha next week for you, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. That will be. I can't see another way. I can't see another. But that's why I'm buying Potts basically to keep the door open. I could look at old Lafie or something like that. But that makes I'll be at 0.1 the next week.
Cunha will go up before then as well, I think. So
that sounds really risky. I mean, I've got no. I don't know. Maybe I could get a stack attack for a week. I don't know, but I mean, it feels like I'll end up with lots of money on the bench. I don't really want to be on the bench, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd rather play one of the midfielders and kind of
Potts is fine.
Defenders, and just deal with it that way.
Yeah, he's fine as a bench option. He's getting the minutes. He gets your DEFCON. Yeah, not a problem. I think that's more than sensible, mate.
Cool. All right. There we go. Happy Christmas.
There we go. We did it. A longer one, 100 minutes. Hopefully this was more enjoyable than the Fulham Nottingham Forest game. Let us know in the comments and reply to us on any method that you can to let us know whether or not we were better than that. But hopefully we were. Thank you all so much for listening and for watching. If you did want to find us, you can find Who Got the Assist on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. On Blue Sky, I'm at just FPL Pricey. On X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, just FPL Pricey on there. And on YouTube, it's Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. And Sam is FPL Pricey on there as well. Of course, Mark, that's from last week. Mark is FPL General. I mean, Mark is FPL General. I'm reading last week's notes. Mark is FPL General. Go check him out as well if you fancy, although he's not on today's pod. We wish him well though. If you did enjoy today's pod, please do one, if not all of the following. If you could follow us on those channels, that'd be great. If you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, also fantastic. And finally, if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like, hit subscribe as well. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. And whilst we're at it, go check out Mark as well. Why not? Another shout out for him.
Thank you, everybody. Happy Christmas. I know that this time of year can be very difficult for some people, so I really hope it's a peaceful one for you if you're in that boat. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back for our final pod of the year next Saturday, the 27th, due to holiday movements for me, principally. I'm buggering off to Norfolk to see the indoors. And that'll be it. until the 4th of January, unless there's something big that comes in which case we'll try to get something emergency out there. I mean, we're talking stratospheric. We're talking like a Haaland injury or something like that. I assume you'll probably live without us. Happy Christmas, and we'll see you next weekend.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist?